Welcome everyone to today's talk. My name is Ahmed Hasani, and joining me as well is Azzan Kindi. Azzan is Rihal's CEO. I am the lead data scientist at Rihal as well. And for my topic today, I'm going to address overcoming AI implementation challenges. And before I even get to that, I just want to give you a very brief description of who we are. So Rihal is an Omani company specializing in information management and process automation. Basically, we provide you smart and customized solutions. And just like I said, I'm the lead data scientist at Rihal. And today, that's why I'm going to address the AI challenges that, from our experience, we have seen and how to overcome them. So basically, before I mention what are the challenges and how to overcome them, we need to understand where we are today with AI. So AI's benefits are many. Most noteworthy are automation, consistency, and scalability, meaning that the performance is consistent throughout the day, regardless of what the time that you're going to use the solution, and it's scalable, that meaning so many people can access it at once. More and more organizations are using AI because the services cover many aspects, but not everyone is successful in adopting AI solutions in their work. So as AI has grown in the many problems that it has been solving lately, so is the business model, meaning there are many ways to implement AI. One noteworthy approach is the software as a service, meaning that because we face many similar problems, why not just have a service that can be rented out to the stakeholders? Some examples include chatbots, image and text classification. However, this approach is not that customizable. This is one business model that has been popular recently. On the other hand, more companies are now encouraged in creating their own in-house AI teams because they can see themselves in the long run needing many AI solutions. So it's smarter for them financially to go with that approach. And with that being said, this brings us to the point of how is AI implemented? What are the popular ways of doing so? Just like I said, you have the software as a service, you have your in-house development, and your outsourcing. So software as a service, you pay as you go, meaning you can either pay as per your use or pay for a certain duration. And this is cheap in the short term, but very expensive in the long term. So if you have a problem that you just needed to be solved in a very specific duration, this might be the best way to go about it. But like I mentioned earlier, if you are anticipating a huge demand for AI in your organization, it might be smarter to go with the approach of in-house development. Now, this is expensive in the beginning because you have to invest in talent, invest in their training and other technical requirements. But in the long run, assuming that the team has been able to produce many solutions, it will be cheaper. And in the case that you just need one customizable solution for your need, then maybe it's best to go with the outsourcing option. Now, obviously, there's no long-term expenses with that, except maybe for warranty and support, and it is flexible for your needs. Now, before I address the challenges specifically, I just want to bring up a scenario that I have seen organizations that I've worked with go through, and this will shed light on the challenges. If we can touch on an example that we can see how AI may not work best here, or maybe what is stopping it. So let's assume we have a very busy traffic intersection. These two lanes, the waiting time, they need the green light to be open for 40 seconds, whereas these two lanes in the north and south only need 20 seconds. And people in the longer times are coming and going to their workplaces, whereas we can assume that the shorter time are residential areas. But what if nobody's going to these workplaces? Maybe it's the weekend, or maybe just like we've seen lately, it's a quarantine. And for some reason as well, the residential areas are now more populated. We have more traffic. And so the traffic rules we had initially are not that suitable now, or maybe they need to be adjusted in the short term. What if there's a situation where, the traffic time is equal all across? And so again, we need to come back and change the rules again. And so the problem statement in this case is, let's say that you are a head of a department in the municipality and you're responsible in improving the quality of the traffic. And so in this case, you identify that the traffic time here is not that ideal because it's not balanced. And as well as the rules that are now in place flexibly. Your objective is that you want to improve the traffic quality for drivers by changing the waiting time in a flexible manner, regardless of the time, day, or the circumstance. And you want to do it automatically without having to ask those engineers that put it in the serve that purpose. So you're given a budget of 65,000 riyals, and can you hear me? Okay. You're giving a budget of 65,000 riyals, and based on your research, you find that AI is it's the best way to go, and you settle on 2 vendors. You start your negotiations with them, and initially, given the initial requirements, you're given an estimate that the cost would be roughly 50,000 riyals. You go to your supervisor, maybe your boss, and you two are happy about the cost. You come back for the follow-up, and you find out that you don't have enough data to implement the AI solution. And that will require to gather the technical equipment as well. That will cost you another 10,000 riyals. And you're happy because you're still under the budget. Finally, when you do come for the final business requirements, you find that you don't have the system infrastructure or the architecture that will require to host the data, the solution, to ensure that the servers are adequate enough to handle the traffic, and that will cost you 35,000 riyals. Now, it's very likely that negotiations will stop here. What you anticipated as a 6 months negotiation period now might be more than a year. And who knows, maybe because you don't have the budget and you cannot allocate the extra finances, that the project may not even take off. And so this boils down to, what are the implementation requirements when it comes to AI? And there are 4 main categories. There are the technical requirements, which, just as I mentioned now, you have your infrastructure and your data. You have your talent requirements, so basic as your programmers and your project manager, which both will require an AI technical awareness. Obviously, that's a given with programmers, but not always with project managers. You have your business requirements, meaning, is this organization aligned when it comes to their AI strategies? And finally, you have your financial requirements. Of course, you need your budget to purchase these solutions or develop them in-house. Now, this translates directly into challenges. And you can see here that I've scratched off the financial challenges because it really depends on your organization. There's no answer when it comes to financial requirements, no one answer, excuse me, because it really depends on your needs, whether AI makes sense to you financially, and whether the benefits exceed the cost. And I will address that later on. So if I summarize the challenges, you have your technical challenges, you have your talent challenges, and you have your business challenges as well. We will go through each one right now. So obviously, starting with talents, you cannot do anything if you don't have the right talent in place. If you want to develop things in-house, you need your software developers and your data scientists. Both work together to develop a full product. So a data scientist alone may not be able to do that. You need the whole team. Just like when building a house, you need your architects and your engineers. It's the same thing here. And let's say you go with the route of renting a solution or outsourcing a project. You still need a project manager, and you need one that is able to understand the requirements, specifically when it comes to software solutions. Data. I cannot emphasize enough how data is important when building an AI solution. Honestly, it's the fuel behind AI or machine learning, because machine learning algorithms are trained on data. The absence of data means the algorithm cannot learn to replicate the answers in the future. And as a result, your organization must have data sources that produce the data your data must be organized, they must be categorized and labeled, and finally, you must have in place a data storage. It could be your data warehouse system, your data lake, or as simple as a database in a server. And your team must have the technical awareness, specifically when it comes to the managerial positions, because oftentimes when you are outsourcing a project, the success of the project really depends on that project manager and whether that project manager is able to understand the requirements and also the cost for each project and is able to negotiate accordingly and most importantly, successfully as well, so that the project is not halted. So if I am a project manager and I hear about AI for many years now, I'm aware of the benefits. I'm also aware of the importance of data, but I may not be aware of the execution and requirements, and that may impact the project adversely or negatively. And I want to illustrate this point in a different way, using the example of building a house. So let's say I'm building a house and I need to build the foundation, obviously, and the cost of that foundation is 15,000 riyals. However, the engineering firm that I've contacted mentioned that, oh, I can save money by not building a foundation. So I could save 15,000 riyals by not building one. And just to illustrate this further, a foundation means having the groundwork done here, just like this simple cartoon house. But because you are a person with enough technical awareness to understand how homes are constructed, you understand the importance of a foundation. You understand that a house cannot exist without a foundation. So when you hear this suggestion, you are extremely concerned by this engineering firm's suggestion that, hey, this is a way that you could go, instead of feeling happy that you could save money that way. Because you understand that not building a foundation may result in that house sooner or later. So obviously you want to avoid that outcome. And at the same time, just because let's say this engineering firm actually did mention building a foundation is important and you need to pay 15,000 riyals. Again, because you have the technical awareness, you don't stop negotiations because you hear that you need to pay this much for a foundation. You have anticipated that requirement. On the other hand, just like how you are able to detect unsafe cost-cutting measures, you can also detect whether someone is taking advantage of you and charging you an expensive cost estimate. So if you're anticipating a total construction cost of 150,000 riyals, 150,000 riyals, then if someone comes and tells you, hey, the foundation alone will cost 100,000 riyals, that already draws a red flag in you. And because you understand that the soil and the groundwork does not require any special attention. And as a result, you don't need that expensive cost when it comes to building the foundation. So likewise, you don't go ahead and approve the building order, and you don't ask for a bigger loan or investment or finances to build this special foundation. And so your technical awareness comes in both places. And this is important because you can detect anything that is a red flag, either in the technical design, either in the cost itself. And as a result, the negotiations period will be much shorter and you will be able to successfully carry out this project in a shorter duration. Speaking of which, one very important aspect of building an AI solution successfully is your infrastructure. Just like a house needs a foundation, your AI solution also needs an infrastructure. And by infrastructure, in a general sense, it's your technical systems or your software. This could mean your edge devices that capture data, your servers where the solution is hosted, and your data warehouse or the cloud where, your cloud systems where you store your data and you have your dashboards and data lakes. And obviously security is an important issue here, and that's part of your infrastructure. Going back to the example, an edge device would look like this. And obviously, because it's taking live feed from traffic, this is considered data. It has to go somewhere, and that somewhere means your infrastructure system, which takes care of the whole security and storing this data. And I've taken this from NVIDIA because they are responsible for these edge devices in this picture that I've shown you. And just like I said, you have your edge devices, your cameras, you have your servers, you have your graphic cards that will go into your servers and cameras as well. And it's not mentioned here, but you need somewhere to host your data. And in this case, it could be the cloud. And finally, your business strategy and plans. So let's say your organization is undergoing a digital transformation phase, then you need your strategy, because a strategy will be able to indicate that there is a business need that will be achieved using AI, rather than focusing on AI as the end goal. And this is very important to note, because implementing an AI solution is not the end goal. The end goal is the business outcomes that will come from successfully implementing an AI solution in your business. And so having that strategy in place that notes this very clearly, that you have a business need, that this business need means saving money or a higher profit that will be achieved using AI, then you can have your whole team focus on what is the goal when it comes to implementing a technical solution. Because sometimes it may not even be AI. Sometimes it might be a simple software. Or if you don't need a strategy, at least you have a project plan. And again, this also requires having the technical awareness that is the project manager is responsible for. So addressing those challenges, if we really want to be thorough, we will start first from the strategy, going down to the AI training and awareness for the whole organization, ensuring that my organization has the infrastructure and the systems that it needs to host solutions in the future, that these solutions have the data that it needs, and my organization is able to provide that data, and most importantly, the talent. But what if I need an expedited plan because I only need to focus on a department rather than a whole organization? Well, maybe a simple plan might do the job, and I just need to ensure that the technical requirements here, which is the systems, the data, and the talent, is also satisfied. And if my organization also has that already, even better. So there's really no one plan. It really depends on where your organization is right now and where it needs to be to implement solutions. And so depending on that, you can expedite the plan accordingly. But when it comes to timeline, honestly, there's no one correct answer. It depends on the size of your organization. It really depends on the finances and other factors. So the most important thing is that you ensure that in each step, you are going through it successfully, having a way to measure whether you have conducted that step successfully before moving forward. And whether that takes 1 month or 2, that really depends on the organization. So with that being said, if we go back to the example of the traffic light, let's say now you are still the head of that department in the municipality, but now you are a very savvy, technical savvy project manager. First, you will be able to assess the problem better. You might say, hey, sure, an AI might be a solution, but it might be an expensive and a long solution to implement. Maybe there's another way to go about it. But if AI still makes sense to you, because now you're able to assess that, you also understand that you need the infrastructure and data. So you will already communicate that within your organization before even thinking about implementing a solution. And in the case that you have provided that, well, you now understand how to budget the project better. And so this will also lead to a successful negotiation phase with your vendors that will hopefully translate into a faster turnover duration. And so that's it for my talk today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Azzan. I think we're good then. Then I'll hand it over to Azzan Kindi, the CEO of Rihal. I think you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I just realized I'm muted. If audience, if there's anyone who has any questions, just please raise your hand so that we can give you, I think we can give you the mic to ask any questions, or you can ask the questions in the chat. Okay. All right, if there are no questions, then we can move on to the next topic. Let me just share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you, Ahmed. A very enlightening session you have given us here. So again, my name is Azzan Kindi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rihal. My topic is a pretty short and pretty business-oriented topic. Is the challenges of building a tech startup. So as I've mentioned, name is Hassan Kindi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rihal. Today we are going to speak about the topic mentioned in hand. I'll start with a bit of an introduction about the company, maybe a short introduction since Ahmed has already given his part there. I will go through a quick disclaimer about the topic that I want to bring forth. And then the types of challenges, we're going to speak about the types of challenges that are faced by the tech startups. And then go into a look into each of these challenges and then a broad idea of how to overcome the challenges that tech startups normally face. What route should you take as the road to success? And then hopefully be able to wrap everything up with a short conclusion, and then we can go into questions. If anyone has questions about the topic itself or about what we do in Rihal, please feel free to do so after the session is done. So I'm going to skip through the about us since Ahmed has already gone through this. A bit of a disclaimer. So today the challenges that I'm going to put forth are from real scenarios that Rihal has actually faced. This is not me just doing research and getting the generic challenges that face the tech startups. These are real world challenges and scenarios, and because of this, I'm not going to be able to cover everything when it comes to the challenges because there's so many and they cannot be tackled in the short session that we have. So just bear in mind that there are so many other challenges out there, and they are on a case-by-case basis, depend on what you actually have and what kind of company that you are trying to build. These challenges can come to your organization. The other part that I want to emphasize on is that this session discusses the challenges themselves more than the actual solutions to the challenges. The reason behind this is that in many cases, there is more than one approach to solve a challenge. But nevertheless, if you guys want me to speak about a specific case of how we were able to overcome a specific challenge, I'll be more than happy to answer this. But today's session is going to be more into diving into the kind of challenges that we have and just trying to break them down topic by topic. And in the end, I'm going to say that all problems can be bypassed if you are aware of them. So that's a motto that we have. If you are able to, if you are aware of the kind of challenges that you are going to face, then it's more likely you will be able to overcome that challenge. So without further ado, we at Rihal we faced a lot of challenges in starting our tech startup, and I can break the challenges that we have in three main areas. So there are fundamental areas for the idea that you have for your company, the funding that you're going to start with, the kind of people you bring on board and as partners into your startup. And then we have the operational side. This is the day-to-day challenges that you face in your organization, running the company, the governmental challenges that you might face into getting the permits, the licenses, your intellectual property, and so on. And last but not least, this is something that is not talked about as much, which is the technical challenges that might be faced by your organization or by the tech startup in the tech ecosystem or in the tech field. So moving on, just to go into these challenges one by one, we'll start with the fundamental challenges. And the main fundamental challenge that is faced by any entrepreneur who wants to start a company is the actual idea that you have for your tech startup. The first thing you have to think about is there an actual demand to this idea? You might think that you have this amazing idea in your mind, and you're not able to sleep at night because of the excitement that you have. Just to find out that when you go to your first client, you realize that um, they are not buying into your vision, they are not buying into your idea. So the idea, like getting the right idea and just sculpting it in the best way possible, is definitely one of the most difficult challenges a tech startup can have. There's so many ideas in the market, and then there are so many ideas that can come through you while you're working, while you're thinking, while you're contemplating, and then there's a huge chance that this idea is not the actual idea that you go with. So it brings me to the next point, which is, when do you actually pivot from your idea to what the market was? And this is something that most of the tech startups, at least when it comes to the region, in the Gulf region, they go through, where they have an actual idea, and it's a marvelous idea, it's an amazing idea, and then they get to a point where they just have to pivot their idea into something that the market wants. So that is something that we faced, and we had to overcome this thing. So the question is, should you pivot or should you stick with your idea? These are some of the challenges that you need to anticipate, and every single tech startup will go through this. The other thing is, the idea that you have, is it a B2B? Is it a business to business? Is it a business to customer? And there's a funny sentence that was given by Azzan, who's the CEO and co-founder of eMushrif. Is it a B2G to B2C business? So all of these things can you, as a co-founder, you need to think about all of these things, but at the same time, these present themselves as a challenge where you are not able to move forward just because these challenges are actually like hiccups for you. The other part that comes into the idea part, in many cases, when you speak to entrepreneur advisors, they'd always advise you into putting in your mission and vision and values for the company, which is an important thing, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, as someone who is an engineer by trade, um, I take the practical approach, or we as Rehad take the practical approach in doing things. So what I mean is, before writing our ideas down, we go and we test practically to see if it works or not. We speak to the clients, we build the product, and then we build the documentation based on what we have found. So you are presented with two pillars in this case. Should you start with the business case study for your idea, or should you actually be more practical and you go into the idea and then from your findings build your business case study? Some of the challenges that you might face in this case. Another challenge, which is a huge challenge for a tech startup, is being able to manage expectations. I'm putting these logos in front of you, and I'm pretty sure everyone is fully aware of this. But the unfortunate thing that happens is, as a tech startup, you will always be compared, whether consciously or subconsciously, with the tech giants out there, whether it's the Googles, the Apples, the Amazons, and Microsoft. And the question that comes is, you are a tech startup, so you must be successful. Look at Microsoft. You must be successful. Look at Amazon. You must be successful. Look at Google. But the fact of the matter is, it's not because you are a tech startup that you will 100% be successful, or you 100% succeed. Or even if you succeed, it's not a given that you will be able to reach to that level that these companies have gone through. These companies are unicorns. Their success had a lot of stars had to align to be able to actually be in that success. Of course, the mindset and the mentality has to be there, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, being able to manage your expectations, being able to put the right metrics for your success is a very important part, and it's a very big challenge for entrepreneurs. Especially what happens is, when you are successful in your first 2 or 3 projects, um, you get so excited into the hype that comes after this. Oh, company X was so successful in this project that they've managed to get around a fund, so and so. and you are consumed by this hype that you are not able to actually do the work that you're set out to do. So that is one challenge that is kind of difficult, especially in this bubble of hype that we have in for tech startups. So the other part is in the from the fundamental perspective is finding the right partners that you want to partner with in your tech startup. I've mentioned in the beginning that I break down the challenges into three different bundles, and everyone has his own way of breaking down the challenges. But in our case, the way I have brought the partners into Rihad as my co-founders and partners was to basically tackle these three pillars: the fundamental pillar, the operational pillar, and the technical pillar. So the co-founders take care of these challenges, and everyone has his method of going through these challenges one by one. So it's extremely important and extremely challenging whenever you start as a co-founder to find the right partners that will believe in your vision and be with you whether you succeed or whether you fail. And the other part, and the last part, at least what I have from the fundamental perspective, is securing the initial funding at the beginning, which is not the most challenging thing in the world, because as a tech startup, you don't tend to have a lot of capital that you need to invest in to actually get off the ground. But nevertheless, it's very important to be able to get some funding at the beginning, whether it's from family, whether to get a loan, whether to build from whatever you have sold, to be able to secure some funds to fall back into, especially at the initial stage. So this is definitely a challenge that anyone who is going into the tech startup field needs to put it into perspective, to have in the back of their mind and be able to overcome it whenever it presents itself. Second category is the operational challenges. So this is just your regular day-to-day stuff, and they're quite they can make you or break the company that you have. And if you want to start a company that is able to sustain itself for years to come, or if you want to be able to get the best exit there is, or if you want to create the best product there is, the operational part is the infrastructure that everything falls on. And there's so many different things that I can speak of from an operational perspective, but I'm going to speak about three main things that we face as a company when it comes to the operational part. And one of the biggest challenges that we have is the hiring part. That we are, as you had, we have 45 people at this stage, and when it comes to hiring, there is no space for mistakes. You need to hire the right person at the right time with the right talents. And the problem is, especially at the starting stage, what tends to happen is you will hire someone whom you trust a lot, and you will hire him at the specific right time for a specific project or to create your product, and you will spend 3 months with him. And then if after 3 months you are not happy with that employee, what will happen is you will lose 3 months, because you will never hire 2 3 people for the same role. You will hire the one person to do everything in that specific place, especially when you are starting. So there's basically no space for mistakes. And then finding the right talent with the right budget, which is always the argument: should you hire an experienced person who will come in and add knowledge to your organization, or should you add a fresh graduate into your organization? This is always a very difficult challenge for us. What we have seen, at least to give you an example, in this space, we've seen that if we hire an experienced person, they can take the responsibilities and roles of 3 fresh graduates. So that's a ratio of 1 to 3. But at the same time, we have seen fresh graduates who were able to take over the role of an experienced person in just 2 months. So we've seen both ends of the spectrum, and it can be sometimes very challenging for a specific role that comes up, to be able to choose between these two different places. Of course, one of the biggest and most important things is to be able to find people who can do multitask work. And the other part is, when do you hire a specific person at a given time? Like, when do you hire a finance guy? When do you hire an accountant? When do you hire a recruiter? When do you hire marketing specialist? When do you hire actual developers? Should you wait for the projects to come in and then hire, or should you hire before the projects come in? So many questions that can be asked in this field, and every single one of them would definitely have its own answers, and every single one of these questions will need its own session to dig deep into the case studies and just try to understand what kind of solution will be most suited for the kind of startup that you build. Another large challenge, and this is probably the thing that makes or breaks a tech startup, is cash flow. Are you able to generate money on a regular basis? In some cases, you will be able to land a large contract, but the problem with this contract is that you will not be paid until the work is fully done. How will you, in that case, how will you be able to pay salaries for your employees? How will you be able to go to a new office, or purchase furniture, or purchase laptops, or purchase cloud solutions? All of these questions are kind of hectic into the entrepreneur's mind, and cash flow is definitely one of the things, at least what we have seen, really is the biggest factor that makes or breaks an organization. Should you go into SaaS solutions? The problem that comes in there is, SaaS solutions are great in theory, but it requires a lot of capital. It needs to be, you need to do a lot of development beforehand, and then the return might not come in as fast as you hope it to be. In many cases, you see solutions that are $5 a month, $8 a month, and to be able to accumulate so much money and so many users from that specific solution can sometimes become a challenge. Of course, there's a lot of examples where people manage to do SaaS solutions, but at the same time, most of the SaaS solutions that are out there, unfortunately, have failed. Just because of the cash flow issue. And there are other factors, mainly consumer adoption. But in this case, the consequence of it not succeeding is the company's demise. Should you go, whenever you go into a contract, or whenever you go and serve a client, should you go for profit, or should you try and target long-term partnership with the client? And this is always a very tricky question, because you, in the back of your mind, you will always be looking for profit, you'll always be looking to make money, but at the same time, you understand that doing proof of concept, doing work for free at the beginning, will result in you making a bit long-term relationship or a long-term partnership with that client or organization that will hopefully at some stage yield returns at the end. And last but not least, how far are you willing to bootstrap? In the end, you have employees. Employees have their own needs, whether it's family, they're supporting the family, they're supporting their themselves for their lifestyles. Are they willing to actually bootstrap with you, or do they want to be regularly paid employees with competitive salaries to the market? So this is definitely one of the largest challenges that we face, at least as a tech startup. And then comes the day-to-day challenges from an operational perspective. I have a lot of examples that come into mind, but in some case, I think one case we had a project where we had to get around 30,000 documents from an organization, and we couldn't take a truck to that place because it needed a specific permit to go there. So I had to rent a truck myself and then go there and pick up all of the papers and the 30,000 pages into the truck, and then take them to the scanning facility. just to manage that specific, very specific thing that happened on a very specific day. So being able to handle the day-to-day challenges, you sometimes go into a day with a full schedule, but then one simple problem might happen where, for example, your servers are down, your software is not working anymore, you have a visit from a client, and then you have to put everything aside just to be able to deal with that very specific problem on that very specific day. So these kind of challenges, of course, I cannot list them because there's so many, but I put them under the operational department that needs to be dealt with on a day-to-day basis in many cases. Last but not least, when it comes to the challenges perspective, is the technical challenges that an organization might face, which is something that not many organizations think of these challenges, especially from an entrepreneur's perspective. You think about the money that you'll bring in, you think about the idea that you have, you think about the clients that you are going to serve. And I've seen in many cases, tech startups will not think about the technical perspective. And the technical problems that you, or challenges that you might face, is from very specific technology stack perspective. What language should you develop your solutions in? And this in many cases, people think that this is not the most complicated thing, but what I've seen in the market is, or at least what I've seen from our perspective, is this was always a very tough decision for us to make. Which technology should we go with? Should we go with the more traditional technologies like Java, the .NET, or should we go with the more up-to-date technologies like the Go's, like the Java, whatever libraries in JavaScript, and there's so many different pros and cons that come into choosing a specific language. And the main one is, will you be able to get the right talent if you choose a specific language? Is this language going to be supported for the next 10 years? Is this language easy to adopt from hiring, from a training perspective? Like if you hire fresh graduates, will they be able to jump into that language easily and just code into that language? These are some of the toughest decisions that comes from a technology, or technical perspective. Should you go should you host your solution on cloud and bear the cloud solution, monthly subscriptions, or should you buy local servers and pay one time and maintain your own servers? And the other thing that is always a challenge is, when you do the development, should you do the development for the problems that you have right now and then, or should you build your solutions in a way that can be scaled in the future? And I mean, the normal answer would be, yeah, you should build them for scale. But at the same time, you need to think that if I'm building something for scale, then what will happen is, I will spend more time on the problem and I will not be able to meet the deadline, or I will be spending so much money on actually solving a problem that is not worth it. So all of these questions become huge challenges to tech startups when they actually start. And in the end, and the other part is how to keep up with the technologies that keep coming in and day out. And this is a challenge that developers face, or as a tech startup we face on a regular basis, where we go into a technology and we invest so much time, so much money in the technology, and then realize months later that there's a newer version or a new language or a new technology that's out there, and we need to move everything into the new technology so that we can keep up with everything that is out there. And then from a technical perspective, also the other part is, which is the fundamental part. It might go in both the operational and fundamental, but in this case, I'm speaking about it more from a technical perspective. When it comes to building the solutions or building your product as a tech startup, should you outsource or should you hire? And every one of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. When you hire people, you have control over them. You know that they are doing the best work that they can because you've chosen them. But when you outsource, you can fire at will. Whenever the project is done, you can let them go. But you don't have as much freedom over them. And then the other part is, which is something that I spoke about, should you hire experienced or should you hire fresh in that perspective? And last but not least, when it comes from a technical perspective or the technical challenges, is something that not a lot of people realize, especially tech startups, because what tend to happen is when you have a good idea, normally this idea will be very niche. And when you have a niche idea, what tends to happen is you will be the only person doing that service. And then you will not see any competition from left or right. However, the moment you start to grow, the moment people take notice of you, you will start feeling the competition, and you will start feeling that the pie is not as big as what you hoped, and everyone is trying to fight for the same pie. And the competition is quite fierce, especially when you grow larger and larger. There's so many organizations that are out there that have been doing this for longer than you. They've been doing this, they're more experienced than you are, and at the same time, they have more network and relationship than you have. So this is definitely a huge challenge that a tech startup will always face, is just maneuvering through the competition. And brings me to the next point, which is, should you compete with these organizations or should you partner with these organizations? This is, of course, a question that comes as a challenge for me. I know that I've put, in many cases, in all of this, I put a lot of challenges, and I might have painted a very dim perspective of being an entrepreneur, being a tech startup. And in many, it might be very true to say so, because it is very challenging. It is, in many cases, you are hit with challenges that are not so, that you cannot solve like right away. You need some time to be able to solve it, and in some cases you will need um, to invest your own hard-earned money yourself to be able to overcome specific challenges. But nevertheless, like I said in the beginning, if you are aware of the challenges that you have, and you work really hard to overcome the challenge, and you just try to break down the challenges on a case by case basis, and you are able to work with your customers, and you are able to understand the needs of the customer, then no challenge is too large for you. And that, from that perspective, the other part of the story is, there is no answer to how do you solve a challenge. There's no one size fit all solution for the challenges that I've spoken about, or the challenges that I haven't spoken about, that are very specific for specific startups, whether it's technology, logistics, um, finance, fintech, whatever it is. Everyone would have their own challenges, and don't get dragged into the whole hype that says we will solve your problem, like finance will solve your issue. Get a loan and you will be able to solve it. Oh, if you get the first contract, all your issues will be gone. There will always be the next challenge in that case. So my advice in this case is be vigilant. Work as hard as you can. Work as vigilant as you can into these challenges, and tackle them on a case by case basis, and try your best to not leave any challenge behind and think about it at a later stage, but tackle these challenges head on. The other part is just focus, focus, focus. Focus on the work that you do, focus on your clients, focus on your employees. And if you are able to focus on all of these aspects and perspective, then in most cases, from what I've seen at least, you will come out successful in the end. And I think this is something that everyone is trying to do, and everyone is striving to achieve that thing. This road towards success, or the route towards success. As I stand here, we are not. We can never say that we are successful. We always strive for more. We always strive to be better. But when it comes to success itself, you need to be able to create your own metrics for success. Don't be dragged into taking the metrics of others to determine your own success. but build your own confidence into your success. And at the same time, if you are, from at least from what I've seen and what we have seen, if you are vigilant at the work that you are doing, then hopefully success is around the corner in that case. Just leaving you with a few words as a conclusion in this perspective. The first thing is, starting a tech company is challenging, and it's very unfortunate for me to say this, but the dream of building tech startups has always been, we call it pink dreams, أحلام وردية, unfortunately, and it's much more challenging than what is perceived, and what we have seen, unfortunately, there are so many companies that have failed because of, whether it's because of the pandemic that happened or because of any of the challenges that I have spoken about in today. So it is quite challenging to do so, but at the same time, failure can be an option. You need to be able to accept that you will definitely fail along the way. You will fail into creating something. You will fail into some projects that you go to, and you will fail into many other decisions that you make along the way. As long as you are able to learn from these mistakes, as long as you are able to work towards not making these mistakes again, then hopefully you can be successful in the end. I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. Being aware of challenges is the first step towards success in this case. And like I've mentioned before, we have bundled our challenges, at least in our organization, into these three different aspects: fundamentals, operational, and technical. And if you can bundle your own challenges into your own groups and subgroups and then tackle each one at a time, then that is a good step for you to take towards overcoming these challenges that you have. Then last but not least, which is definitely the advice that I give everyone, seek advice. Don't think that you are able to do everything on yourself, by yourself, and seek advice from those who are that have started before you and that have gone through that journey before you, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's colleague, whether it's myself. Always seek people whom you can take advice from on a case-by-case basis. And that's it. That is the presentation that I have. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask? We are, myself and Ahmed, we are both more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.